G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by CrowCast, of course. A little bit better this week. Unfortunately, we didn't get the win, but signs were improving with a few changes. So let's talk all about it without any further ado, shall we? Good evening everyone and welcome to round 9 of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by CrowCast. As mentioned in the intro, we didn't get the chocolates this week, but it was a little bit better and there's a bit to talk about, as well as obviously the results from around the ground. And joining me so far in the hot seat is Nikki. How are you going, Nick?
I'm going pretty good, in spite of the voice from yelling at umpires last night.
Yes, the umpiring was original.
That's generous.
It was a unique interpretation of Australian rules football umpiring.
Oh my god. It was deplorable. I'm going to go with deplorable.
Let's go with deplorable. That seems good enough, especially umpire number 22. He seemed to have a particular issue with the rules on Sunday, or the interpretation and application of the rules. Never mind. He wasn't the only one. There's a couple of other matches where they decided to give a hard or play a hard line with the dissent rules. It's just I don't know. Based on Friday night, we should have given away about 650s, I reckon. But nevertheless. Obviously, thank you and welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord and also on YouTube. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, and YouTube is running, is it? Yes, it is. If you are on YouTube and you want to get around the chat, you can either chat on YouTube or you can get in our Discord if you want to have something to say. Anyone else who happens to be listening on in the live stage tonight, if you do feel like having a bit to say, feel free to put your hand up and we'll be happy to have you on. Hopefully Nikki will be around all night and hopefully Macca will turn up in due course.
I'll try not to fall asleep.
Well, just before we get started, it's going to be a challenge because I rely on Macca heavily for the weekend's results.
I've watched one other game apart from ours, and I've been busy the rest of the weekend.
There's something even more disappointing, Nikki, and this is why I'm kind of padding it out a little bit. I actually found his music. I was going to surprise him. And he's not here. No, I'm just a sad person because of that. But never mind. Look, without any further ado, why don't we just do this, shall we?
Oh yes, I am just a grumpy old man. That's what I am. And I really don't care who knows it.
I'm so disappointed that he wasn't here for that one. It's been a while since we've played that one.
It's been almost 2 years, I reckon.
Oh, and here he is! Oh my god!
Speaking of the devil.
Yeah, I was reading and I forgot the bloody time.
You were bloody reading, Macca, and you missed this.
Oh yes, I am just a grumpy old man. That's what I am. And I really don't care who knows it.
I found your intro, mate. I found your intro music and you weren't here to hear it.
Okay, ready to go.
All right, thank God. All right, let's get into it, Mac. Friday night, the Doggies pretty comfortably over the Pies. The Doggies 14-15-99. The Pies 7-9-51. Margin of 48 points.
Yeah, no, the Bullies were far too good for Collingwood. They lost Pendlebury before the game, and they got jumped in the first quarter. They were 32 points down at quarter time, and the Bullies very dominant midfield. Treloar, they used him a lot more in the midfield than usual, and he had a ripper of a game.
He did have a good
and
game.
The other usual suspects, McRae, Dunkley, and Smith. They're all outstanding numbers, and Sweet, he won the rucks very easily. One interesting thing was the inclusion of its second game player, I think he was. I hope I get his name right. Buka Karmas, Sudanese lad who played. He got 3 goals and he looked very well. Tight.
Yeah, played very well. One thing I like about Treloar is as a midfielder, he hits the scoreboard. Really like it. He had a ripper of a game, I thought. He's underrated.
He actually ripped the game apart, didn't he?
Yeah, underrated in my opinion. Anyway, next up we have Richmond fighting out a entertaining win in the end, 23 points, 17-15, 1-1-7 over Hawthorn, 14-10-94.
Yeah, they had Richmond. They had the luxury of getting Martin and Blossom back, and both played very well. It was a contest in the first half, and I think they only led by a goal at half time. But after half time, they managed to increase at 3/4 time. Hawks gave a bit of a yelp in the last quarter.
But came back a bit at the end. But
Richmond's too good, and that's 3. I think that's 3 in a row they won now. And
yes,
they probably will play finals, fame, but they're not a premiership side. Lynch got 4, Martin got 3, Rewalt got 3. I mean, the forwards they were too good, weren't they? Nankervis won the rucks quite easily too, I thought.
I tell you what, mate, if their best 22 is still good enough. I think they had 16 or 17 of their premiership team playing. So Pressier back, Martin obviously. Lynch played really well. And Pressier, I think, is an underrated piece in their puzzle, to be honest with you. I reckon, look, 4th place is anyone's at the moment. I think Melbourne and Brisbane are a lock. Carlton are looking good. Freo obviously looking good despite today's result.
Terrible today.
Yeah, we'll get to those, but don't write Richmond off. And if they can get finals at the G, Mackie, you know what that's like. We've been through that.
We have. One thing just a final comment on the game. Bolton, wouldn't you love to have him in your side?
Oh, 100%. Smoky for the Brownlow. There you go.
God, he gets these swoops on that ball and it just makes things happen with his speed. Oh, just love it.
Very, very eye-catching, and I reckon a Smoky for the Brownlow this year. All right. Oh, what the hell have I done there? Okay. This one. All right. Port 17-13, 1-1-5. Easy winners over North Melbourne 6-10-46. Bit of a nothing game, really.
Well, I think you described it in that sentence. Port demolished North Melbourne, 69 points. Wines, Rosie, I thought they were outstanding on the ball. You know, it's interesting. Rosie's been wasted probably all last year in a forward pocket. They finally put him on the ball this year, and I know he had a bit of foot trouble last year, but since they put him on the ball, he's starring, and it really makes you envious and wish we had got him in the end.
They've got to play someone decent yet.
They got
to play someone decent yet.
True. But still, Kenny said they can win 5 in a row, and I think that's 4 of them they got now. So
who they got next week? Geelong will be a test.
Kenny might save himself, and that's good because it means I'll never win a flag.
Doesn't bother me. Yeah. St Kilda probably the best win of the round. Oh, them and Gold Coast probably. 13-12, 90, 10-point winners over Geelong, 11-14, 80. Really good performance by the Saints. Workmanlike.
Yeah, and I would say it was probably the best game to watch of the whole round as well. It was excellent standard, very competitive game. It came with a high cost for St Kilda. We're still he was tackled and his shoulder driven into the ground, and he ruptured his AC joint, and he's going to have an operation, be out for 2 months. To his credit, he actually stayed on. He went off, and they bandaged him up, and he came back and played the game out. But he's a great leader. He's a great player, and they're going to miss him. And also, Higgins got another concussion as well, Pete. So they will be slightly weaker in the weeks to come because they at full strength they look a very, very likely team. Geelong, they led early, but once St Kilda got that run on in the third quarter, they just couldn't stop it. And their style of play, as you know, is like this chippy around business, and then hopefully get into position then to attack. And I like St Kilda's much more in preference tonight. And I must mention this: Paddy Ryder in the ruck. It was one of the nicest, best ruck exhibitions I've seen for a long time. He made the midfielders look good with the way he'd go up and he'd just palm it backwards, sideways, forward. And he also kicked 3 goals resting in the forward pocket. It was outstanding to watch, actually. I thoroughly enjoyed that game.
Well, I think when you see a quality ruckman at work, it reminds you of the value of a good ruckman rather than just a tall bloke. You know what I mean? I mean, Ryder is a genuinely good or A-grade tap ruckman. A-grade tap ruckman, probably the best in the comp at the moment in that regard. And he gave them first use so often. And when you're a midfielder and you know that your ruckman can put it in various places, and you have confidence about that, that's a big bonus in the middle.
You're not wrong. And the other thing too is that Brad Crouch, I'd love to have him back the way he's playing footy now, Fee. I mean, he is playing superb footy.
His last month probably has been pretty good. Obviously got some miles in the legs and thriving in the environment. Why couldn't we get his legs right, Mac?
Yeah, you got to ask that question.
You do. Anyway, Sydney 14-21, 105, 58-point belting of a very, 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 very disappointing Essendon 6-11-47.
Yeah, look, I didn't see it because I was watching the Crows at the time, and I didn't bother to watch the replay either because it was not going to be worth watching. But Sydney too good for a very ordinary team in Essendon who I think they're sitting about 2-7 now, and they're going to be in. Their season's over, and they won't play finals. Swans, well, they would have looked good playing against Essendon, and it gets them back, I think, into the top 4. But they did have 2 losses before this game, I think. And, I'd say beating Essendon, well, that's just standard, I would have thought. Not much else to say.
No, well, the only thing I'll comment on is a stat that I saw this morning on one of the footy shows that basically Essendon had 30 tackles for the game. 30 tackles.
That is a thorough disgrace. And, that doesn't surprise me, though. That does not surprise me. But I think they're a pretty soft side.
Or they're not playing with any heart. They're not playing for Benny Rutten. Does he make the season? I'm not sure whether he does or not. They might pull the trigger. I think.
Well, if they he might make it to the end of the year. But if they keep on playing like this for the rest of the year, but like this for the rest of the year, he'd be hard pushed, I think, to hold his spot.
Well, I don't know, Mac. I've got a feeling that the Cameron resignation might just open the floodgates on a couple. Because there's a few coaches around, and I think if you're Essendon and 1 or 2 others, North Melbourne maybe, you wouldn't want to be starting behind the 8 ball. I reckon it might actually. I reckon Essendon might pull the trigger by the bye if they keep playing like this.
North Melbourne must get rid of Noble because he's been a fantastic administrator, but he's not a coach.
Not at AFL level. It doesn't appear that way, does it? Very good coach at state level, but not cutting the mustard at AFL level, albeit with a pretty shit list, let's be honest.
Oh, it's a shit list, but
Yeah.
Enough said about them.
Yep. The Suns, a good win over Freo, 10-9, 69, 4-9, 33, 36 points in the end. I always felt this was a game that Freo might drop. It's a long trip. It was shitty weather. They've been travelling well. Suns up and about a little bit. It was all... I actually tipped Suns. It's one of the few tips I got right this week.
Yeah, I didn't get too many right. I watched a fair portion of this game, and Freo must have left their A game at home because first quarter was pretty even, but after that, Witch got totally on top in the ruck, and Collins led a very, very tight defence. Scholl was very dangerous up forward, and Rankin, I thought he was dead and buried, but he emerged from the grave, and he came back and he played at the level that he was playing when everybody was raving about him.
He had a blinder.
He had a blinder, yeah. He had 15 disposals, 11 score involvements. He really did look like the player that got drafted back then, and it's been a long time since I've seen him play like that since his first year. They kept Freo actually goals for the second and third quarters. Never got a goal in that time, and they ended up with 4 for the game. Not a great effort for them, Bob. They'd be very unhappy.
I just feel like it must be the shittiest trip for a Western Australian club, particularly in wet season up there, to go from relatively dry and sunny Western Australia all the way up to up to Gold Coast where it's wet and slippery and
My other point, there was, and the chat they mentioned, one point I'd had mismaking was the fact that it is his contract year, whether it be with them or with somebody else. He's out of contract at the end of the year.
Who's that, sorry?
That's are you asking me who?
Yeah, who are you talking about?
Talking about Rankin. Rankin, he's out of contract at the end of the year, and whether that be with them or somebody else, I reckon he'll start turning it on for the rest of the year to get his value up. And I've got to mention Freo Erasmus, they took in the draft. He looked very, very good. He's probably very close to be their best player. Yes,
I like him a lot. All right, Carlton, a very strong win away against the Giants, 15-15, 105. 30 points in the end to the Giants, 11-9, 75. The Giants couldn't get it done for Leon Cameron. And I just felt like it was a game. It was a danger game for Carlton, all pointing against them. The last game of the coach and blah, 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 playing away in average conditions. And I just felt like Carlton played really well.
Well, as I said in our chat, Fane, last week I said that they should get rid of him as coach, and they obviously listened to CrowCast, and they did. So, but very, very disappointing effort by GWS. I think they let their coach down very, very badly. Very badly. Bruce absolutely dominated the ruck, and they've got this huge variety of midfielders. Josh Kelly, he was outstanding, but the others they weren't worth a crumpet. And Hewitt, Kennedy, Walsh, they did really well at the stoppages, and it was a heartless, soulless effort by the GWS team. And from the coach's point of view, he must feel bad just to walk away from them, because Cameron deserved better than that. I thought he deserved better, and they gave him nothing.
I've come to a realisation with GWS because I picked him again this week. And, they towed us up because we had, kids playing in the midfield and whatnot. And they brushed us aside and were able to play their style or the style of footy that they like. But when they come up against a team that is similarly hardened and has strong midfield, and they're not able to play the way they want to play, which is Larry running, attractive football, they're found wanting. They have too few that are willing to go under those circumstances, and it seems to me that maybe that's a product of having so many high draft picks. They don't actually have too many workhorses.
No, very good point. They certainly, there's quite a few of them that aren't accountable for their opponent at all, and run around like headless chooks, and I was really disappointed with them today. Actually, also bitter too because it cost me my fantasy team winning.
Ooh, yeah, no wonder you're fired up, mate. Someone in the chat
first
asked
off-
me which
First
red
of the
wine.
year, mate.
Someone asked me which red wine I'm drinking. I think in chat, it's a nice little Coonawarra Shiraz tonight.
Nice choice. Nice choice.
Oh, you can't go wrong down there.
No.
And then the late game, 16-16 Melbourne, 5-8 Eagles, 74 points. I didn't even watch it.
Well, I started to watch it, and it was very predictable. I watched it. I think I battled on for about 1.5 quarters and then just gave up because you're just watching the inevitable. You're watching the premiership side and the likely premiership side this year again against the side that I think they said that they only had 11 of their best players available, and whereas Melbourne, on the other hand, were only missing 2 players from their premiership side. So, probably the greatest mismatch you've seen. And I think, 70 points might be a fair margin, but I think West Coast did well to keep it to that with the side they had.
Fair enough. All right. As mentioned before, if anyone in the chat would like to, we've got a fair 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 23. Or I could have just read it there in the audience, 23. If any of you guys or girls want to have a chat, don't forget to stick your virtual hand up and we'll be happy to have you on. Let's have a look at the ladder. Melbourne in front, 36 points. Brisbane clear second, 32. Then we've got Freo and Carlton on 28, making up the top 4. Sydney and St Kilda on 24 points. Geelong and Richmond in the 8 on 20 points. The Bulldogs slowly making their way up, as are Port Adelaide on 16. Collingwood faltering on 16. Gold Coast also on 16 points now. Hawthorn and Adelaide on 12 points. Hawthorn with a substantially better percentage than us. The Giants on 8, Essendon on 8. You would imagine Essendon won't get too many more. North on 4 would be very, very pissed off with West Coast also on 4 and potentially stealing their number 1 draft pick this year.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a certainty.
Yeah, so some interesting games next week. Melbourne have got another cheapie, North Melbourne. The Sydney Carlton game will be an interesting one, I think. Also, Geelong Port will be an interesting one. And just given the way they're going at the moment, the Giants West Coast game, if West Coast get a couple back, with the standing coach Mark McVeigh, that'll be an interesting one as well.
Oh, look, I really would have to say though, Fiend, though, with a different coach, that team would have lined up differently. You can't start off with Canelio in a forward pocket and you've got Whitfield in a half forward flank. That's layer writing, and they've got a halfback flanker playing Ash and playing in the midfield instead. No, for me, I just think that there has been some bad coaching and bad usage of the players, and I think that the assistant coach will move them around a little bit differently than how they were placed today.
Maybe. We shall see. All right, well, on to the main event, and it was Adelaide, 9-12-66, getting done in the end fairly comprehensively by Brisbane, 40 points, 16 goals, 6-1-0-2. A game of segments, I reckon, Mac, and Nikki. I've forgotten you're there, Nikki. You're so quiet. But in the end, the line's just too strong.
You there, Nikki?
I am.
Yeah, all right, your turn.
Well, the first half was bloody good. Second half, not so good. It was, particularly that second quarter was, you can see we rejigged things up a little bit and figured out how to stop them using that fast ball movement out of stoppage and actually turning it more into a bit of a scrap, a bit of rugby in terms of just pushing the ball around. And then we actually were getting on top in terms of those clearances. I really liked our setup of our defense. Dawson back on a wing in the first half. And I think that really showed with a whole lot of our movement that was going through.
I hated our setup in defence. I'll talk about that in a moment. Mac, what do you reckon?
Look, I think before the game, if you said that we were going to lose by 6 goals, you'd probably say that was fair enough. But once you actually saw the game played, you know that is not fair enough, because we had the impetus going in the first half, particularly in the second quarter, and there was one vital decision there where Dawson went. He tackled, the guy dropped the bloody ball. It's a holding the ball every day of the week. The blonde-haired umpire, who did not seem to like us very much, got to be careful what I say. He paid it the other way around us for hanging on, and we had already moved the ball on because we thought it was naturally our free. And then he played a 50-metre and they got a goal, which then led to another goal, and just before half-time. And all of a sudden, whereas our dominance in the second quarter just been wiped out by one umpire.
Disagree 100%.
I'm talking about I'm not saying the total effect on the game. I'm saying in that first half.
Disagree.
If we'd gone,
I heard what you said.
Well, I think if we'd gone in with a bit of a lead, we may have our tails up a bit more. But
what about what happened about a minute beforehand, Macca?
You talk about the out of bounds ball.
I'm talking about the missed pass by Benny Keys that was turned over and resulted in a goal. I'm sorry, but that was the momentum shift. The umpiring decision was shocking, I agree, but the Ben Keys kick across the ground in the back line that should have been a straight up on the chest 25-metre pass, and he missed it, and he got turned over, and that was the momentum shift.
Well, you're getting very good support in the chat, so I bow to your superior knowledge. You're probably right. I was just so furious about that one decision.
It's a horrible decision. No argument with me there. And I heard someone say somewhere, it could have been on Twitter or somewhere, the umpire apparently on the mic said, I was going to pay it holding the ball, but the tackle lasted too long. Now, my understanding is that you pay the first free, don't you?
You do.
And you do.
And that's the end of the story.
So, terrible decision, 100%, didn't help us at all. But I will maintain that it was, and Ben Keys had an absolute shocker in terms of his disposal. His work rate in the second half dropped off a little bit too. But that was a kick that should have hit, I think it was Chase Jones that he should have laced out. Missed it, put Jones under pressure, turned it over, goal, and that was a start. And I can tell you, and I can show you in the graphs later, that from the about the 14-minute mark of the second quarter until about halfway through the third quarter, we had 50% of our clangers for the game. And that coincided with Brisbane putting it beyond doubt on the scoreboard. They ramped up their pressure and we couldn't go with it. We started turning the ball over, burning it, and kicking hurriedly. And that period of the game, statistically, it's very obvious when you look at it. That's where we lost the game, right there.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that part. I mean, that's where I was going to after that. You've gone just a little bit before me on that, but there's no doubt that we really went to water with our disposal. It was shocking, and I couldn't even get Ben Keys in my best 5 because of his disposal. He did some real bad ones. Nobody knocked him for effort. His effort still was as good, but kicking was horrible. You can't do that against the good sides.
No, you can't. Now, we've got a couple of people in chat looking to have a chat, so before we get into the stats, we might actually invite them on, eh? We got Mick. Come on in, Mick. How you going, mate?
You got me. Yeah, good, thanks.
Good day, Mick. Good to see you again, mate.
Yeah,
Gotta
I
get a
just
camera.
I've come away from watching games disappointed. I've never come away from a game angry until yesterday, and it wasn't so much anger at our players. It was anger at some of the decisions of the umpires was just way beyond bad. They were disgusting, and I was sitting alongside my son-in-law's a Brisbane supporter, and I was sitting there watching with him, and even he was screaming at the umpires like, "Come on, what was that one for?" Yeah, I mean, I counted 4 goals that were actually given to Brisbane, and at least one there was a run-down tackle that should have been holding the ball about 20 metres out from our goals that wasn't paid. So in my mind, that was like 5 goals that was either given away or not given, non-decisions. And yeah, I know they dropped their bundle in the late second quarter, early third. But if you had everything going against you, like, it must be deflating. It must be deflating to know that no matter what, you're not going to get the proper, fair decision.
Yeah, look, you're right, Mick. There were some terrible decisions or non-decisions. I mean, there was the jumper tag on McCallum, which you could see his jumper pulled back like a great big bowstring.
Yeah, they get paid every day of the week.
And we're paid everywhere else on the ground, but not to us. I mean, that was absolutely shocking. The 50-metre penalty for not standing on the mark. Well, both of the players were running away. Neither of them had ever stood the mark. I mean, that was just ridiculous. And I understand where you're coming from, Mick, because I've watched nearly every game in this round, and our game was more personal because it was our team. But I have watched the shittiest round of football I've ever seen, with 50-metre paid because somebody's burped in the direction of the umpire, or that somebody's run 1 millimetre inside the zone, or some other stupid thing. And I kept thinking, this is no longer a game of football controlled by the teams. There are these guys that are mic'd up, their volume's been turned up to sky high, they're like pouncing fairies, and I've just had absolutely a gut full of the decisions that they make, and it's not proper football as we know it. It just really is not.
Yeah, I was going to point out it wasn't just our game, because I've watched 4 other games this weekend and listened to most of the other ones, and like I have every single game at least 3 or 4 times you've heard the commentators say either that was a bad call, was right in front of him, wasn't paid, or why the hell was that paid? Like even the commentators are you can hear they're getting frustrated trying to call the shit.
It's the first time, Mick, I reckon in a long time, and it may be coincidental that we didn't have Dwayne and Kelly Underwood, but it's the first time in a long time that I've heard a commentary team in one of our games basically openly question the umpires continually. Mal Speed, who's a really good commentator, you could see he was verbally shaking his head a few times. Oh, you could hear he was verbally shaking his head a few times.
I'll be disappointed with our club if we don't have a file, like a video going on Monday or Tuesday going, can you please explain these decisions? And not just our club. I think it has to be every club. Got to get together and say, can you please explain all these decisions? And it's not just us, Brisbane's copped the rough end of the stick before. They've all copped the rough end of the stick, and it's just they say we have a shortage of umpires, and yes, there is a shortage of umpires. That doesn't excuse bad performances.
No,
and that's what this is. This is bad performance.
What I really hate, Nick, is the fact that this dissent rule. I think you should have to have dissent. Abuse? No. You should not be allowed to abuse the umpire.
That's great.
And that should be a 50-metre. But dissent. These guys aren't bloody robots. They are passionate players going 100%. competing like bloody gladiators, and they get a free which they disagree with. What are you going to do? Stand there like an absolute stick, or are you going to go throw your arms up and turn around? It's just, I played the game, and you just can't do it. You can't stop yourself.
We're getting
It's-
off the negatives. I'd like to get on a couple of positives that I did see.
That's what I like about you, Mick.
And I want to, ask Nicky this one.
I was waiting for this.
Yeah, you were waiting for this about Haitley?
Yeah, he had a good game.
Yeah, I think after 5 games, I think we should all learn not to say someone's not up to the level after 5. He played really, really well, I think.
It's really only 2, Mick. He's only been in his whole career. Yeah. That's his second game as an inside mid, which is what he was drafted for.
And the first one was tagging Cripps. We couldn't have asked him to do much harder than that, can we?
That's right.
I think Saligo played. Is showing us why they let him played the first game of the year, because he's got something to that lad.
Yeah, and he's built up a bit. He's bulked up a bit too, Mick, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And I didn't miss Rob.
No. No.
I don't think anybody did.
I think, I've seen some comments and stuff on some of the Facebook pages saying that Shecky was useless, but Strawley was useless, but Christ, it's only his 3rd or 4th game. I thought he did quite well, competed quite well, and at least he tapped in the right bloody area.
That's right.
Yeah, he was changing them up, which is a big thing that Rob's always on about, the different hit zones. And particularly in that second quarter, you could see the Brisbane mids were trying to rove to him.
Yeah, Rob might say he's going to hit the different hit zones, but saying it and doing it's 2 different things, and he seems to be really good at saying it, but very bad at doing it.
Yeah, one thing I will say about Oscar McInerney, he is a very, very good ruckman. And he really towered Strawn up. He had 40 hit outs to 21 of Strawn. He had 11 disposals to 6 of Strawn. And I'm not putting Strawn down. He was up against a very, very good ruckman. He'd be in the best 3 ruckmen in the competition. So
yeah, and like it's poor old Strawn's 4th game. Like
that's the point I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Well, another point.
We're going to get towered up next weekend, and I'm sick and tired of hearing the media say, "Oh, we're in a mid-season slump." We're playing 4 of the top 6 sides in the league in a row, one after the other, and they're saying we're having a form slump. What the hell do you think we're going to do? Of course, we're going to lose them.
And we've also got the youngest team in the AFL by a country mile, where yes, they're getting on runs and they're hitting the scoreboard, but I don't think we've really been disgraced too much in most of these games. There's some of them.
I went around to my son-in-law's last night, Nicky, because I went around and had tea with it there and watched the game with him because he's a Brisbane supporter. And I said to him, if we lose by less than 40 points, I'm claiming it as a win. Because that's what I was expecting. And anyone who thought we were going to beat Brisbane either has got no idea about the game or just got rocks in their head. And, to actually walk away from that and think, well, the umpires probably cost us 5 bloody goals. So we actually played well. And, we faded out for a quarter, maybe a bit more than a quarter when you add it all up. But it's a young side. I mean, we had so many players out there with less than 50 games. To compare the 2 sides is ridiculous.
Well, I'll throw something else at you, Mick, that had we kicked straight, in addition to the goals that the umpires cost us, had we kicked straight, we were right in it. And you talk about momentum killers, a few sitters that were missed by Tex and McHenry and a couple others. Certainly didn't help.
Yeah, McHenry and that one from Himmelberg. God damn.
Yep. So, there were a few momentum killers in that game. And we ended up, with pretty much, 22 to 21 scoring shots. And as you'll see later on when we pull up the stats were quite similar in many areas. It was a lapse or a deflating sort of lack of motivation from about halfway through the second to about halfway through the third. But irrespective of that, under different circumstances, we weren't far off it, to be honest.
I'd actually say red time in the second.
Yeah.
Until like virtually the same spot in the third.
Yep.
And other than that, so virtually you can say a quarter if you add it all up. About a quarter we dropped our bundle.
Agreed.
But other than the rest, I think we took it right up to a top two side.
Yeah, and you got to be happy with that.
I don't expect to win. I don't expect to win next weekend or the weekend after. To think we're going to win against St Kilda. I mean, we might pull one of our bum, but I'm not expecting to. And to go to the Cattery and try and play them, the Cats down there, if we lose that one by less than 50, I'll be happy. But from then on, our draw opens up a bit. We've still got to play West Coast twice. We've got to play North Melbourne twice. And there's a few other sides in there we might get a win or two. We're still going to get our 8 or 9 wins for the year, I'm expecting, when you look at the back half of the draw.
Yeah.
And for a young, rebuilding side, beginning of the year, if you said we were going to get that, I would have said it's about fair.
Yeah.
But you look at, people have got to understand it's not like we've lost this many games in a row. They've got to see who we played.
That's right.
Yeah, I also think, Mick, it doesn't really matter if we don't win any games. It's more about getting, as J-Mac says, we should be we're not going to be very good this year. We just got to keep playing every kid and get games into them so that when they play next year, when we would like to win some games, that they will have a little bit underneath their belt. Soligo is a very good case in point. I thought that if you compared that particular game compared to the couple of games he had early, I thought he showed a lot more. It was only the one, wasn't it? Yeah. And he certainly showed a lot more. And, I think every time Soligo goes around, he'll learn a little bit more about it. He's certainly not afraid, and he's a tough little fella.
Macca?
Yeah, we're not talking about individual players.
No, and this is Mick's call. And Mick, you're a legend. I'm going to send you back to the audience.
Just one more thing.
Yeah,
One more thing before I go. I think in, say, 2 games' time, when Filthy's had a few runs in his legs, him and Himmelberger have to swap out.
Something's got to happen there.
Yeah, because Himmelberg had like 2 good games, maybe a third that was middling, but since then, he's shown absolutely nothing.
You have to remember, though, he is Nicky's adopted son.
I do realise that.
You say that.
All right. This is the longest call in ever. Thanks, Mick. Legend, mate. Talk to you later.
Well done, Mick. See ya.
You two don't bloody help, do you? You just prattle on. Macca, you may as well just have... Macca, you rock up late and then you carry on like a pork chop.
Yep.
Yeah, people wonder. Animal, come on in, mate. How you going?
Oh.
How are you, mate?
Good. Hey, look, I'm not going to talk too long. I just a quick shout out because last night we didn't watch too much. I had a poker night, and a good mate, my Malsey, brought up that he's heard me on the show a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I'm just real quick. I'm going to give out a shout out to Malsey and say thanks for the chatter, mate. That was a good win. I enjoyed that. And,
very good.
That's pretty much. We had the game on in the background. We were watching it, but didn't really.
We should have a CrowCast poker night one time. That'd be good, I reckon.
I would be keen as long as you guys have got plenty of money to give me.
Well, it's always
I have none, and I don't play it.
If you're that eager, I don't want to play there.
Nicky, you'd only be there to serve drinks anyway, wouldn't you?
I'm not going to lie, but yeah,
What, Jet?
I know Malsey will be listening, and he brought it up last night, so I just wanted to give him a shout out.
You're a good man, Animal.
While you play poker, mate.
Of course.
One thing I learned, you got to stop. Don't you let the other drink, and you don't, and you end up winning.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's an interesting concept, but I've drank every time I've played poker, and I've done pretty well. So,
very good. Thanks, mate.
No worries. Thanks very much.
See ya.
All right. I was only joking, by the way, Nick.
But also shout out to his mate for listening.
Absolutely. All right. And if anyone wants to have a poker night, stick your hand up because I'll be all over that. All right. So let's get into some head-to-heads, shall we? See, I brought out all the old music.
Good stuff.
All right. Before we get into the head-to-head stats, I just want to talk quickly about the selection as we do. And on the surface, you'd sort of thought, oh, well, Cook needs a break. Harry hasn't been playing well. Butts has got COVID. Lockie's a bit cooked. Lockie Murphy's got a sore neck, and O'Brien didn't deserve to be in it. And Billy Frampton, okay. But in hindsight, what a stupid decision it was to drop Billy Frampton.
It was a very surprising decision.
It was stupid.
Very surprising. Yep. We just had no height left.
Well, not only did we have no height left, but Fagan tried to exploit us by dropping Fort down there, and they have Hipwood, of course. And the problem was that the game, the conditions and the type of game was actually tailor-made for Billy Frampton because he wasn't going to have to do a lot of work in the air. And we all know that his weapon is at ground level. It was actually the absolute wrong game. And I know Billy hasn't been playing well as a defensive key position player, absolutely, and didn't deserve to be picked on that basis. The problem was that wasn't going to be his primary role. And as a result, we had to sacrifice today again in a key role to try and lock down a tool, which not only isn't his go, but also just kills so much rebound for us when Tommy's got to play an accountable role. I thought Nick Murray was serviceable, but not having any tool support, and Kieran Strachan, one of my criticisms was that he didn't really work defensively terribly well. I didn't think. It just meant that we were outgunned, and not that they took a huge amount of marks up forward. In fact, I think we might have taken one more contested mark than they did in forward 50. But the problem was that because Duday was accountable, we lost all that drive off half back.
I think that's a very good point, Dean. And I know that in the chat they're mixed about Frampton as well, and that's with good reason because he hasn't been that good. But you're right, the conditions and the way the game was played, I just think that was probably a good game that he could have played in, and he could have actually done the job and helped release Duday to do a more proactive intercepting role that he normally likes to do.
And that's the problem that we've got with Billy. But I think he's the best choice when we've got a matchup like we had on Saturday night. You come up against Jeremy Cameron and Tommy Hawkins, and you're not going to pick Billy Frampton. And you assuming Geordie Butts is available, you've got Butts and Nick Murray, who are two very good defensive players aerially. But it was I just felt like it was an easy decision to make by the selection committee, and they didn't think about it. And the conditions, the time of day, the players that Brisbane had out all pointed to the fact that Billy could have racked up 25 touches and done enough on their second tool to allow Duday to also have a bigger impact on the game. So I just think they missed a trick on that one.
Yeah, I won't agree with him. I think though that the coach he was going to make his point at whatever the cost is that. If you played like Frampton did last week, you're not going to get a game. And I think that's really why he was, even though he would have been handy.
You've got to be consistent about that, Mac. You've got to be consistent because he's no Robinson Crusoe. He's not the only bloke that has put in an insipid performance or two. And I think you've still got to try.
I'd say, why is Brown still in the team?
Or Scholl. He ended up having not a bad game, but he'd been playing pretty ordinary before that. So you're quite right, Bean. You could, if you applied that rule, there would have been several that would still playing that wouldn't be there. But
and Darcy Fogarty wouldn't have had a run. So I mean, look, in the meantime, we've got a kid in the twos, Josh Worrell, who I just feel like you need to get into the side, and the fact that he's not getting a run, and I know it's difficult to place him because of the size and the type of player that he is. I understand that, but I don't know. I just thought they outsmarted themselves and didn't really serve our purpose terribly well as a result. That was my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't a good structure, I agree.
All right, let's look at some head-to-head stats, shall we? And I do have my bloody graphs up here, but I won't dwell on them too long. 353 to 343 in disposals, 206 to 224 in kicks, 147 to 119, that lovely number in handballs. So really, when you look at the graph there, pretty evenly matched throughout the course of the game. In fact, we had more disposals for the majority of the game after quarter time, basically. So it wasn't a matter of us not getting enough of the ball, definitely not. Inside 50s, it was 53 to 57, and again, wasn't really an issue as far as I could see until that patch that I mentioned in the second quarter late, where Brisbane just decided to get on top, and they held sway in terms of inside 50s after that. So you can see in the first half, it was pretty even. In fact, up to the about the 24-minute mark there, 24-minute mark there, inside 50s were pretty even, and then Brisbane just blew it out after that, particularly in that patch in the third quarter early. In terms of disposal efficiency, we're actually more efficient with the ball, 72% to 69%. Efficiency inside 50. Efficiency inside 50 talks about scoring 39% to 40%, but again, it doesn't really account for our inaccuracy, Nicky and Macca, and that was the real key. Up forward, let's have a look. Do we have, what was our tackles inside? Our pressure inside 50 was good. 15 tackles inside 50 to 6. So there was nothing wrong with that. In terms of our marking inside 50, we actually had 8 to 7 marks inside 50. And we actually took 13 to 4 marks on the lead. I'm assuming that includes marks that end up being taken outside of 50. So there was no problem with that. What else is there? Our forward 50 ground ball gets 17 to 15, so we were competitive there. So there was really no issue with how we operated up forward in general. 98 to 76 score involvements. That's an interesting one because you could say that we might have actually overused the ball a bit, given the scoreboard. I don't know. Did that look that way to you guys?
Sorry, look what way?
Did we overuse the ball a bit?
I think we did. There were cases where there were players of ours, and we know they have the distance and that they can make those kicks, but they kept looking to pass it off to like a better option in a way. It was like, no, go back and take it and have the go. We also had 4 posters. I think it was 4 in total that actually hit the post. It just kind of felt, but it was interesting that they didn't, as you said, they didn't take a lot of marks in their forward line either. A lot of it was just getting that little breakaway, those quick hands out that was how they were getting their goals. And we just, I thought we felt like we had more of the ball for a lot of the game, and just didn't quite capitalise correctly at times.
It was our
Yeah, I
finishing.
think, sorry. The difference
No, go on.
there between the two is that they attacked very directly down very quickly, and having very good smalls down there caught us out. Whereas, like I think the theme was saying that we were a bit hesitant at times, and there were times we could have had shots for goal. We could have, and we ended up messing it up, and we did have bad luck hitting the post. But I just think the way we brought the ball in at times was good, but not consistently enough. Whereas Brisbane, they're a hardened team. They play this way all the time, and they've got their own way of bringing the ball in, and they'll do that under pressure, whereas we can't under pressure.
Yeah, it seemed to be, to me, just we weren't as clean, even though a lot of Brisbane scores were from ground ball. They seemed to be able to put the ball into space or to the advantage of their teammate more so than us. They're a little bit stronger around the ground in terms of marking, 77 to 69. In terms of contested marks, see there again, 11 to 5 contested marks. So we really miss the influence of a marking ruckman, and it shows how much it hurts when O'Brien is not up and about taking marks around the ground, and in this case, not even playing. So
he'd only taken 1 in 2 games before that.
No, that's right, and it really hurts us.
And Strong got 1, I think, in the game.
Yeah, so if we want to talk about the rucks real quick, hit-outs was 34 to 59 in their favour, and you can see that was a fairly consistent divergence throughout the course of the match there. Hit-out win percentage, that's not a very good number. Hit-outs to advantage, 10 to 25. So you can see that of the 34 hit-outs that Kieran got, 10 went to advantage. Of the 59 hit-outs that Brisbane got, 25 went to advantage. So about a third for Kieran and about just under a half for the Lions ruckman. So, well, I mean, it's probably a combination because I had Fort running there a little bit.
Yeah, Fort as well, yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Again, it was clear that Brisbane were going to go into the game with 2 genuine ruckmen. Because I would say that Darcy Ford is a far more accomplished ruckman than Elliot Himmelberg. And I just think we've got to have a look at the way we run our rucks. I really do.
Yeah, you mean you're suggesting possibly playing 2?
Well, I would consider playing Thilthorpe and one of O'Brien or Strawn and one of Himmelberg and Frampton. And my preferred option would probably be Thilthorpe, Strawn, Frampton, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, well, I think anything's worth a try.
Well, Frampton's 200 centimetres, Matt, and he's not going to give you a huge amount around the ground aerially, but he's certainly going to be useful at ground level. Thilthorpe, we just need to get into the game as much as possible, and I don't honestly see him as a crash bash marking forward. So I think putting him deep and dropping it on his head is just setting the kid up to fail. And Strawn has shown that he's a good tap ruckman, and when played forward in the SANFL, he kicks goals. He can take a mark, he can kick a goal as an awkward customer. I just feel like we've got to try different things, because at the moment our ruck division is really letting us down, and that would be one of the things that I would try, to be honest.
Well, it is worthy of a try, Ben, because, I mean, we've got nothing to lose really at this stage of the year. We're not going anywhere, and if it just helps us lose the game a bit more, or might help us not lose the game so more, you've got to try. You do have to try things. If you do the same thing every time, you get the same result every time. So, yeah, it's worthy of a try.
Yeah. In terms of clearances, 42 to 45, 13 to 10 in the centre, and 29 to 35 around the ground, if you have a look at our centre clearance numbers real quick, you can see that it really, again, it's this period from around about half time to, when the game was done, sort of 10 minutes into the fourth quarter, where Brisbane really started to get on top in terms of their centre clearance work. Zorko actually came off the ground at half time and was saying to, I think, whoever interviewed him, that they needed to work harder in the midfield, and certainly him and Zorko and Neil, towards half time and after half time, really stepped up their game, and it coincided with Berry sort of dropping out of it a little bit, and we'll have a look at some individual stats in a minute. But they really got on top of Sam in the midfield. The one that I wanted to have a look at is the clanger number here. And the clanger number tells the tale that I was, and I don't know whether you guys can see this, but you can see that for most of the game it's fairly even. But this period here from about the 10-minute mark in the second till probably about the 12-minute mark in the third quarter, we just started turning the ball over. We just started missing targets and burning the ball. And that coincided with Brisbane getting back into the game. Now, obviously, some of that was momentum with the umpires, but the Ben Keys incident that I mentioned earlier, Macca, illustrates what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, and that is the trouble with Keysy, because you love him to death for his effort, but if only he could actually kick and hit a Guernsey all the time, or at least kick it to advantage, it would be really good. And I think he's getting marginally better, but he's still got a long way to go.
Yeah, in terms of possession, contested possession, what was it? Pretty even. 147, not really even, 14 difference, 147 to 161. But it was even for most of the game to a large extent, except, again, that little patch just before halftime and just after halftime. In terms of our defensive one-on-ones, we were good down back in terms of our contested possession. In terms of our ground ball gets, we were actually very good in terms of our ground ball gets, and that's generally a key number that the coaches look at. But again, it was more about what we did with it, I thought, Macca and Nicky, than how much we got it, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, because our usage of the ball was poor at times, really poor.
Yeah. Pressure acts, 304 to 273 in our favour. No problem with the pressure that we were putting on. Pardon me. So, and defensively, in terms of our tackles, I think we were okay there, 72 to 55, so very good in terms of our tackles. Our spoils, 45 to 41. Our rebound, 50s, 38 to 42, so that was pretty even. So you can see there's only the stats that really show up anything are the ones relating to how we use the ball. And I think in the end it was ball use, Nicky and Macca, that made that was probably the difference, not only on the scoreboard but around the ground.
Yeah, and look, it's a huge point, actually. It's much bigger than you would think, because when you don't kick it, if you kick it to your teammate and the ball goes travelling down the ground, it just as you say, there's momentum. If you get the ball and every time you kick it to the opposition, or kick it to a loose ball where they've got just as much chance as you of getting it, you can't generate momentum. It's very hard. And in that period when we did generate some momentum, we were actually used the ball a little bit better than we normally, well, certainly much better than we did in the third quarter.
Yeah.
So you're quite right. It's a big, big point.
Nick, were you at the ground?
I think, yeah. So it was kind of interesting in that I actually thought for the first time this was a good matchup for our midfield, because their midfield is not that tall. And whilst there's some speed in it, it's not excess speed, if you understand what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about how they move the ball and get that spacing out. And I actually thought it was particularly in that second quarter, we really countered what they did, but we were able to break away from those stoppages a lot better. And I think it was quite good because we had Dawson on the wing, back where I think that's back where he belongs, which really did help. But then when
Dawson wasn't playing on the wing.
He was in the first quarter, and for the start of the second,
okay.
They moved him to the back lines. When they started to get that run on, they put him back in the back lines.
Mm.
And that's when we started to lose that nice momentum and the passing and everything else. And what you're saying there, that good ball use from that point onwards.
Spot on,
and
Nick.
The other thing
sorry, Nick, just to build on that point, that goes hand in hand with what I was saying about this non-selection of Frampton, because look how much it forced us to change. Because we didn't have Frampton, we weren't getting drive from Duday. We weren't getting. They were getting on top of us aerially, so we had to put Geordie into the hole. So not only did it rob us of Duday, and yes, we got a lot of drive from Geordie out of half back, but it's not where you'd rather be playing him. You'd rather be him kicking the ball inside 50 rather than kicking it outside defensive 50. You know what I mean? So it's a very good point that you made.
Although he did do a balls of a kick at one stage. I was like, okay, don't give him the ball now.
Well, but you understand what I'm saying. The non-selection of Frampton had a knock-on effect.
But the other thing with Dawson too is that he is a kicker, not a handballer. And 22 possessions, I think he had, and I think he kicked it 20 times. It's something like that, anyhow. The ratio.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of him, and he can actually find a teammate. So I personally would love to see him play in the middle, so that he can go in all directions. So he can go forward, back, sideways, because just to keep him in the play, because I'll be channeling the ball through wherever possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he is absolutely cool. The other good thing I thought we actually did quite well against them to counter was that switch we would do across the ground quite a lot to really make them spread and stop the bottle up was part of that. Really, we'd do that to then open it up to then get the run, down the wings.
Yeah.
And so there was some really nice movement. There was that really good, push and everything else that was happening. But you're right, it's just that little bit of quality. It was that little bit of experience and understanding your own teammates, I think, showed up the difference between a finals hardened playing group who's been together for quite a number of years, even with some newer players coming, but there's, they've got that consistency between a very young team.
Yep. And we're going to get that disparity as we push through. And look, as Mick pointed out rightly, and as we've already spoken about, we've basically lost a quarter. Aside from losing a quarter, we're around the mark, and with a little less gifting from the umpiring and a little bit straighter kicking from a couple of our lads, not that far off. So, it's not all doom and gloom, whereas, in previous couple of weeks you're really struggling to pick out a positive. There are quite a few positives I felt out of the game. And speaking of positives, let's have a look at some of them. Rory Laird, 33 touches, 17 kicks and 16 handballs. He had 10 tackles, 9 clearances, 280 metres gained. What else did he do? 4 inside 50s, 10 score involvements, 17 contested possessions. Probably, I would say, Rory's best game for the season.
Very good game. Very good game. Nobody could criticise him for his efforts. He's in the best two for me.
Nick?
I think it definitely was one of his better games. There was still some issues with those high dolly kicks and some better options he could have taken. And at the time there were better options which he didn't do which seemed to be clearly there for him to take. So at the ground, I was a little bit annoyed at him. So I didn't have him in my best two because of some of the things which I think didn't help us in our momentum forward. He went back to those high kicks and I'm just going to kick it down instead of the switch of the play sometimes, where we had some nice free players which would have really broken up the game and really made them spread out of our forward line.
I think you're being incredibly harsh. In fact, I can remember Lairdy spotting up some quite nice low passes.
No, I said he did do, some of those were there, but he also did go back to some of those high kicks and which frustrated me at some key points in the game. When we were really trying to get onto that.
It's interesting because I've heard two sort of opinions on his game, and they vary substantially depending on whether you're at the ground or not. It's quite fascinating, actually. The people that were at the ground haven't rated his game nearly as much as those who were watching it on TV. It's fascinating. Not saying either's wrong or right, but that's what I've seen.
One of the reasons is because he's smallish and often amongst other players, so you don't see him that easily. But when
I know exactly how that man runs.
But when you're on TV, you can pick him even in a pack, and
I can pick him in a pack at the ground.
Well, BM said he didn't barely notice him. Went 33 possessions, you should notice him.
Yeah,
I noticed. Yeah, he did some of those good things. There were some nice ones, but there was also he went back to some of the things that just frustrated me.
Yeah,
I didn't have him top two.
Put it this way: he in terms
five.
of our coalface, in terms of our clearance work, no one was better than him for us, and probably he would have been in the top 2 or 3 clearance getters on the ground. He had 5 stoppage clearances. He had 5 stoppage clearances and 3 centre clearances, so 8 for the game. 25 pressure acts. I don't know, Nick. I'm happy to take your opinion, but I think you're being a little bit harsh for mine.
Agreed.
Anyway,
I've got standards for him.
Yeah, everybody's got opinions, Nick, so you're entitled to yours.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. I mean, I won't bring up the fact that you named Ned McHenry in the best the other day when no one else realised he was playing, but we can just move on from that.
I know. What you were trying to say is I'm more astute and I picked it up. I understand, Frank.
No. Jack Haitley had a good game, I thought, Jackson. He had 27 touches, 12 kicks, 15 handballs, 2 marks, 5 tackles, 4 clearances, 371 metres gained. Also, he had 4 inside 50s, 8 score involvements, 10 contested possessions. Probably the number one advertisement for playing a kid in the bloody position that you drafted him for.
Yeah, very good point, Fiend. Excellent point. And look, he did have a good game. It doesn't matter whether you like him, whether you hate him, or whether you're indifferent. He had a very good game.
And what I think helped him was that I think they still used him as a bit of the tagger role, but the tagger that they put him on, or the player to play on, was Lions. So, player that's not that fast, he's not bigger than him. It gave him the opportunity to actually be able to use his body quite well and to be able to get separation from him. And he didn't have to worry so much about the hurt factor going the other way. So he actually got to play more as a midfielder and less as a tagger.
Well, he certainly played as a midfielder because he quite often got the ball out on his own.
Yeah. Oh, once he got it, he split really well.
Well, he's certainly got to be, he's got to be continuing on in that role, and hopefully he just keeps on playing at that level.
This is another one of those ones, Nicky, where we're all different from you. that what it is?
How so?
I don't know. I didn't think he played as a tagger at all. But that's just
I
me.
don't know. I know
Oh, I was saying he was finding Lions, because that was his matchup, and that was who he was going with. Because sometimes when you see that midfield structure, they'll swap players, and positioning, but he was often the one following Lions, so he would often change the side sometimes depending with Lions. So you could see that he was following him, but it was to me it was more an old fashioned of you're playing on him, you just go with him for the game, and we'll see how it ends up, kind of thing. Instead of the modern version of a tagger, which is that same kind of thing, but you don't really go and get the ball. Your just aim is entirely just to stop that player.
Maybe out of stoppages, Nicky, he might do that, but not around the ground. I thought Haitley made good spaces around the ground.
No, but that's what he was doing. He was doing that more. He was playing like a midfielder.
Well, that was what he was supposed to be playing.
I know, but they like to play him as a tagger.
No, they don't like to play him as a tagger. He played once as a tagger. That's once he's played as a tagger.
No, when they brought him in last year, they played him as a tagger as well, and I can't remember.
Played in midfield. Anyway.
Yeah, so they played him as a tagger last year when they brought him in.
I'd like to see that footage. All right. Who else we got here? Benny Keys. I thought it was a pretty average game by Ben, even though he got his 27 touches, 12 and 15, 5 marks, 4 tackles, 10 clearances. All sound like good numbers. But gee whiz, he burnt the ball, didn't he? 4 inside 50s, 4 centre clearances, 2 score involvements, 18 contested possessions. I just want to have a look at his clanger rate and his turnovers, because he just absolutely burnt the thing. So he only had 5 clangers, but they were all after half-time, barring one. Turnovers, 7 turnovers. It's not what you want from a bloke who's getting 27 touches.
No, I thought he marred his game with that, and nobody's ever going to disagree that or think that he hasn't given 100% effort, because he always does. Nobody gives more effort on the ground than he does, but his disposal, he really has got a lot to learn about. But it was probably because we're playing a game that a team puts more pressure on than most. He did burn the ball, no doubt about it.
Well, when you're getting it that much, like 27 posies, and you only have 17 effective posies for the game, that's a lot of wasted effort, isn't it? And you know that whole work smarter, not harder thing. I think Ben Keys is very much a work harder type, and someone's got to pull him aside and show him his tapes and help him to understand that he's better off getting 25 quality touches instead of 30 touches, of which 10% of or 20% of them are burnt, and often result, like at least one on the weekend resulted in a goal going the other way.
Yeah, can't argue with that thing.
I mean, you've got to be smart about what you're doing. And everyone has a bad one, and he's been fantastic for us. And his work rate can't be questioned. But I think he might be trying a little bit too hard at times, and I think he doesn't take the right options at times, and his disposal, he just needs to be staying home after school and working on his kick.
Agree.
Nick?
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought he was trying too hard against his old side.
Geordie, 23 touches, as you pointed out, 24, sorry, as you pointed out, Macca, 22 and 2, which is an amazing stat. But the thing is, he can kick so often because he has this uncanny ability, even though he doesn't look overly fast, of just getting through traffic.
Yep. He's an amazing player, actually, and that's why I would like to see him in the centre, because where he's got the whole field in front of him both ways, and we'd get our maximum value out of him. It's just a roaming centre, because I tell you what, I reckon he'd pick up about 30-odd touches and they'd all be good.
Well, it's easy to say that, but moving from half-back to the midfield has found a lot of people out, Macca.
He played. Actually, he's a very interesting player because I've watched him playing with Sydney, and he started at a halfback, and he got a very, very good halfback when he was with Sydney. Then they moved him up on the wing, and he became a very good wingman. And then towards the end of that particular year, they started using him on a half-forward flank because he was he could usually come up high, but he's a guy that goes pretty well wherever you put him. He just reads the ball very well.
Yep, I don't think I'd play him in the midfield. I'd like to see him on a wing, though. I think he's a genuine winger.
But I'd like him to be, if he's going to be on a wing, I'd like him to have the licence to patrol the whole area, just not that wing.
Well, which he did in the first quarter, very much. He started on the ground on the wing, and he played the first quarter on the wing, and he played the majority of the second quarter also rotating through the wing.
When he had, 620 odd metres gained, at 400 of which he got by half time, and he hardly got a touch in the first 20 minutes of the game, and then he just went nuts off half back, and as soon as he got pushed back, he just started directing traffic there for a little while. So, again, we're forced to play Jordan in a defensive situation, and we're not getting value from him. Remember, we used to play Seaman off a half-back flank as well, and he'd kick all those balls to the wing, and half the time we'd turn him over and they'd come back on his head. And then we managed to get him pushed up so that he was the kicker into the forward 50, and whilst his kicks were often too shallow, it was a far better use of someone like him than it was coming off half-back, where everything was just down the line and high and long and not to any sort of target. Dawson could be even more damaging in that role if we can get him into that position where he's the last kick inside 50, because he can get it to that 30 metres out, but he can also put it to someone's advantage, which is probably something he's got over Seaman and also Brodie Smith. So again,
what Sydney did with him last year, thing.
Exactly. So we've got to sort this back half out so that we don't have to rely on Jordan Dawson to sweep up. We need to free up Tom Diday quick smart, because Tommy's good in that role, in that rebounding role. He's got a cool head. He doesn't get too flustered, and his disposal's pretty reasonable. And I just think we just need to free Tommy up.
No, agreed, Payne.
Stuck out like dog's balls to me, Macca. Jimmy Rowe, I thought was very good. 23, 11 and 12. He had 5 marks, 2 tackles, 3 clearances. Played up the ground a fair bit. 10 score involvements, which is what you want from James Rowe. 5 inside 50s. So all the things that you want Jimmy to do, he did. I thought he had a very good game.
I think a top game, possibly his best game that he's played for the club. And as you say, he had I think 10 score involvements as well. And he does use the ball very well in general. So, he got a big tick from me.
Yeah, really, really liked his game. And I think just everything you've just talked about there, just that disposal around the ground, he's a smart footballer.
Definitely a footballer's footballer, isn't he? Like, he's got the IQ. He was involved in 4 score launches. What did I say? He had something like 10 score involvements. He knows where to put himself. He knows where to put the ball. He gets himself through traffic. And from a purist perspective, it annoys me when he ducks. And I heard apparently Stephen said that Jimmy might be known as Joel Selwood in the Rowe household. I'd prefer he didn't do it, to be honest with you. But the first one that he did that sort of got us underway, I thought, well, yeah, okay, that's reading the game, and the fact that we needed something, and he put himself there, and he dropped, and all that. I'd rather he didn't do it, to be honest with you. It's probably the only thing I don't like about his game.
Yeah, that's fair enough too, mate.
But yeah, it probably holds his spot.
Yes, sometimes it's he does the calculation of I will very much lower my body. He doesn't do the drop the knees, but he lowers the whole body.
It basically slides into touch.
He's calculated to do it, and other times they do just get him high.
He doesn't shrug like Selwood does. He tends to slide into touch. So you're right, Nick. He doesn't kind of drop it at the knees. He just kind of slides his feet forward. So he drops his shoulder.
Well, he does it as he does it as if he's about to turn. So your body will actually go at that angle. So he starts to turn, and that's what gets him. So he doesn't have to raise the arms at all. He's not like Geneva from Collingwood, who does the Selwood, which is the arm raise, and the Bulldogs, which were so good at it. He actually drops his whole body and he turns, and they just you can't tackle that legally. It's smart.
I'll tell you who else has gotten very good at it. Mitch Duncan's got very good at it lately too. The last couple of years of his career. Tommy Day, as we spoke about earlier, probably found himself with a job that he would rather have not had. Had 21 touches though, 14 and 7, 7 marks, 2 tackles. He had 415 metres gained. He had 4 inside 50s, which is fantastic for his role. 2 score involvement, 16 intercepts, if you don't mind, and 7 contested possessions. So you can just tell it was really a what might have been kind of game from Tommy, through no fault of his own, really.
No, as you say, just the circumstances of having to play that role because there was nobody else picked to do it. So that limited his game, and it also put some negativity into his game as well. But he did. He had a pretty good game overall, considering the conditions he had to play under and who he had to stand.
Yeah, he's looking those past couple of weeks. He's just after which game was it? Where we were all just going, what is going on with him? He's just not right. Is he trying too hard? He just seems to have started to get that form back, that composure back, and the confidence as well to, I am going to run through and be a link player. And that was just, it was really nice to see. And I found it really hard. I couldn't get him in my best 5 players, but I think there's a number of really good honourable mentions for the game.
Yeah, that's pretty close to it, Nicky.
So you haven't got Laird in, you haven't got Diday in. I'm wondering.
No.
You got in.
I do have Laird in. He's just not the top 2.
Luke Pedler in?
He didn't play.
Sorry, Nick. Lockie Shoal, I'm not going to spend too much more time on any of these. Lockie Shoal, 21 touches, just didn't seem to have a big impact on the game. 321 metres gained, so maybe I'm being a little bit unfair. He had 2 inside 50s, 4 score involvements, 6 contested possessions. I just felt like... I don't feel like he's having much impact on the game, if you know what I mean.
That's probably a good summary. But it was a better game this week. I never saw him pipe this week, whereas I did twice last week. Which amazing. And the one thing I won't accept is a player that absolutely pipes. But I'm sure he would have been spoken to by the club about that. And look, he did get the 21 touches. Some of them were good, and he's a good player if he's really at his best. But he's definitely not at his best at the moment.
when we had that nice run on in the second, that's when he was getting a lot of those meters gained. He was being really proactive around the clearances. A couple of times because they would structure the one up the back and he was on the opposite side, and I'm thinking, oh, this could hurt us. But he was the one who actually was getting the ball out, helping get the ball out of those clearances. So,
when did you say that was?
You're right, he faded in and out.
When did you say he got all those meters gained?
No, he got some of those meters gained from when we were getting that run on in the second.
He didn't have 1 meter gained from the 6-minute mark until the 6-minute mark of the third quarter. So he went a whole quarter without a meter gained. He actually gained all his meters.
In the third?
Well, he had quite a bit in the third. Yep, a little bit in the last.
Yeah, definitely the third, man.
That's
felt
what
like he was doing something. Oh.
That's what the stats tell me, Nick. Unfortunately,
I can't remember. I wouldn't be exactly specific, but he did have one good little spell where whatever quarter it was, and but as somebody said in the chat, they prefer Cook over him. So would I.
Yeah, I agree. He looked like he'd had a good talking to by the club.
Scholl's got exactly the same issue as Rory Atkins, and I can't believe we've got a clone. It took us so long to get Rory Atkins out of the club. And I'm not saying that I necessarily want Lachie Scholl out of the club. But what I will say is that if you're not going to do what you're in the team for, then you're not doing it right. And we know he's not a contested ball beast. We understand that. But what we get from Dawson and what we got from Seedsman last year on the wing, what we get from Brodie Smith at times, those sorts of players, that's what Lachie Scholl needs to be. He needs to be that player that can get out on the outside of the contest and hit someone up at distance. At the moment, Lachie Scholl is all these little chippy passes. For him to only have, how many possessions did he have until half-time? Let's just deep dive into Lachie a little bit. So Lachie, up until half-time, Lachie had 12 possessions. How many of those were kicks? So he only had 3 kicks and 9 handballs up until half-time. So, first of all, he's not putting it on his boot enough. And second of all, when he is, we can see as soon as he starts kicking the ball, we get some value out of him. But when he's just doing these dinky little passes, 20 metres and all the rest of it, that's lazy football. That means that he's not running hard enough to get separation. He's not making position enough to be able to get himself into the clear. And he's taking the easy short kick option half the time. That's not what we need from Lachie Scholl.
Yeah, well, mate, I don't know that Lachie Scholl's definitely a long-term answer for us. He's a current-term player, but if all our young lads come good, I don't know whether there will be room for Lachie.
Only 4 score involvements, Lachie Scholl. That's goals and points. Only 4 score involvements for the game. So yeah, I don't like picking on the kid, but I just think there are areas of his game, and this is where I don't understand when the coaches do their Monday talks and all the rest of it, and they've got much more comprehensive stats than we're able to look at. It should be plainly obvious that Lachie Scholl is cruising. He's doing what he needs to do, and 20 touches on the board looks good, and everyone goes, good on you, mate, you got 21 touches. But when you actually drill down, you can see that as good as useless touches.
Yeah, I agree. He has to lift or be replaced.
Yeah, Brodie Smith, 18 disposals, 11 and 7. Thought he was a bit quiet, actually. 4 tackles, 381 metres gained. Just wasn't prominent by his standards. 5 score involvements only, 5 intercepts. He was only on the ground for 67%. Now, why would that have been? Why would he have been on the ground so little time?
I've got no idea. I don't know whether he got a knock or anything like that, because that's not a lot of time, is it? I thought he was handy without being dominant.
Nick, did you notice him being off the ground for a stretch?
Who was this?
Brodie Smith.
I did sometimes wonder where he was in the back lines.
Yeah, we're just mentioning that he had 66% time on ground, which seems quite low.
So where they give him a bit more of a rest coming back from that head knock, but that seems a bit weird.
Although he did get another little bit of a knock in the game too, so it may be that they did treat it a little bit cautiously, possibly that.
Well, that's interesting because Ned McHenry only had 57% time on ground too, and that immediately leads me to ask the question, why play him if he's only able to play 2/3 of a game?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's capable. Oh, I see the concussion thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why play him? If they... that's terribly low numbers. But then again, Sam Berry only had 64% time on ground.
Sorry, which one was that?
Sam Berry only had 64% time on ground. Ben Keys only had 67% time on ground. We must have only had like 13 players on the ground. Taylor Walker only had 50%. Chase only had 45% time on ground.
That can't be right. Surely.
Oh, no. I'll just go and look at the right stat now. Sorry about that. My bad. Brodie Smith had 86% time on ground. I was looking at disposal
statistics.
I was looking at disposal efficiency. My apologies for that. That makes sense. Fine, we can get on with our lives now. I just felt like I don't know. Brodie didn't seem to have a lot of impact. Had 7 rebound 50s.
He always tried, but you know, he had a tidal wave coming at him at times. So
that's true.
I think the defenders are always going to look a little bit worse when you've got a team as dominant as Brisbane were in the third quarter.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that most of our problems stem from them overpowering us in the midfield, Macca. No doubt about that. And I think our defence in general suffered from what I was speaking about earlier, just with a poor setup. So yeah, I'm not about to hang it on any of the defenders at all, because I think they all tried pretty hard. Elliot Himmelberg, on the other hand, your boy, Nicky.
He's not my boy. I'm off the wagon.
Well, he's not the Messiah, that's for sure.
When did you divorce him, Nicky?
We divorced him quite a few weeks ago, all 3 of us.
Well, I thought it was only a tokenism on your part.
No. Oh, no. And then he played the good game, and we're like, we're not back on again, but we're going to wait and see. And waiting and seeing is there's issues still going on there.
You know, from my point of view, I look at the Himmelberg that plays with GWS, and I look at the Himmelberg we've got, and I think they can't be by the same father. One moves
they can easily.
One moves very smoothly, and the other one doesn't. Guess which one we've got?
The graph that I've got up probably highlights my frustration with Elliot, and it wasn't a marking night, but contested marks 0, marks on lead 0. The bloke has to be able to take a mark. And the observation that I made the other day holds true. I think it's a mental struggle, Macca, for him to actually drag himself to attack the football. I think his base instinct is to sag off. And when he is forced to attack the ball through circumstances, or like he's got no choice or else everyone will throw cans at him, you can see it's a real mental wrestle. It's not his natural instinct to do that, is it?
No, it isn't. He's just not mobile enough. Seriously, he isn't. And like you said, he did not take one mark on the league, not one. And I mean, he's in that position where we drive the ball in long, and I mean, other teams, somebody clunks it. He doesn't.
Yeah, took 2 marks up until half-time and 1 after half-time. I mean, he's not working hard. He's not making enough contests to do that. But that's
I
just...
honestly don't know whether it's in him, Dean. I mean, are we seeing just what he's got to give and that's it?
So Eric Hipwood took more marks, took 4 marks, 1 mark on the lead. E. Himmelberg, niente, nada. It just disappoints me, and it's a real dilemma. He's not... It would be all right. My argument for having him in earlier in the season was that he straightened us up. But what I observed last night, and he's been doing it now for a couple of weeks, is he's not actually running to the right positions, Macca. He's not putting the ball... He's not forcing players to kick to the right spots. And there were a couple of times, I think Lockie Scholl got done once because Himmelberg just ran to the wrong spot and Scholl ended up turning it over. And there were a couple of other occasions as well where Elliott just did not run to the right spot. He's not assertive enough, in my opinion. As a centre-half forward, Mac and Nick, you'd know that you have to be assertive. You have to make that part of the ground your own. You have to be strong. You're going to get belted in the back of the head all game. You have to make that part of the ground your own. You have to be the avenue, and Elliott Himmelberg is just not that player, unfortunately. Not that player.
He doesn't know how to demand.
Well,
no, it's not. I don't think it's in him.
You put it in a position where he should mark it, he still doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's probably not in his nature. I'm sure he's a gentle giant, quiet-natured, maybe a little bit shy or whatever. He's not assertive, and it probably is why he drops so many marks as well, because he doesn't grip the damn ball. He lets the ball hit his hands. He doesn't go to the ball. So whether there's a fear, you could probably do a bit of a psychological study on Elliott, because it seems to me that he's just not strong enough mentally to play that role. And so, what do you do with him? Is that the end for Elliott, or can we use him another way?
Well, I don't know where else you can use him. You can't put him in the back line; he's too slow, and he can't ruck for peanuts. And he will give you one good game in about 10 up forward. So for me, I would say the experiment with him is over. I'd be happy to experiment and try Fish up there. I don't know that he'd go any worse.
Well, let's just keep the conversation on Himmelberg, because I think he's at a bit of a crossroads. I think if you drop Billy after a couple of good games and a couple of bad ones, you've also got to drop Elliott after a couple of good ones and what I would now say is 4 bad ones. And I think Elliott's bad games or good games came against probably less strong defence, but he's been up against some pretty good defenders over the last month or so, and he hasn't got it. And I know he's young. I know young guys take a long time to develop. I get it all, but I'm just not seeing the intent. If I could see the intent, and it's actually a worry that I have about Thilthorpe in terms of his aerial marking as well. I'm just not seeing the intent from Himmelberg. So yeah, I don't know what we do with Elliott. He's one of these guys I really want to succeed, because I'm sure he's a lovely lad, and he's got all the physical attributes, and he's good at ground level. He's probably as good as Frampton in terms of actually gathering the ball below his knees, etc., etc. And he's got quite a good football brain, but we need him to be able to assert himself aerially.
I don't think it'll ever happen, Pete.
Anyway, we won't dwell on that. Sam Berry, I thought he started well, Sam, but I just thought that Brisbane's midfield just got on top of him a bit, and he went a little bit quiet there through the middle part of the game, was my observation. Let's just see what he did.
Yeah, he started very well. Started very well, and then he faded, and he came back with a little burst, and then he faded again. So, what he did was good. He just needs to do a little bit more.
There were a couple of their goals that they got were purely and simply because when they were setting up in the middle, and he should have been closer to his midfielder because the ball was still in dispute. He was too much on our attacking side. He wasn't defensive. They had that separation. Quick flick of the hands out to them. You see that beautiful pass that they do into the forward line and Berry trailing behind. He'd just given them too much separation. So he just needs to be that little bit smarter as a midfielder when the ball is in certain sections of the ground.
Yeah, he did some good things, Nicky, but you're right.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he started pretty well, and perhaps he got a little bit carried away with that, and then became a little bit looser. But I did like his start of the game, and if he could, he just has to learn to expand the amount of time that he's good for.
Only 9 effective disposals for the game out of a total of 14. I think what you raised there was a very good point, that you've got to know. Nicky, you said that he might have got ahead of himself a little bit. When the game's running in your direction and you'd start running a little bit ahead of the ball, or you start running to space, to be next in the chain and all the rest of it, that's great. But you've got to be able to feel and be realistic about when the opposition midfielder are just starting to break even and get on top again and win a few contests, and you've got to know when to pull back and be defensive. And I think you're right, Nick. He went through a stage there where he probably didn't recognise that he just had to tag up a little bit on Zorko and Neil for a few minutes.
Yep, and that's purely, I think, all what it was. To me, it just comes down to experience. How many games do those two have it under the belt?
Oh,
how many games
100%.
does he has as a pure midfielder?
100%. These are observations, not criticisms. He didn't have an effective disposal from the 10-minute mark of the second quarter until the 19th minute mark of the third quarter.
Yeah,
he had one in that time. The last quarter. He had one effective disposal between halfway through the second and 3/4 of the way through the last. So he really dropped out of the game, unfortunately. But it's a learning experience. I think we've seen enough of Sam to know that he's got really good potential in our midfield setup. He tackles really well, as who was it that said that someone on the chat said that. Let's have a look at his tackle numbers real quick. So 13 tackles. So that's the value that you do get from Sam. At least he's 13 tackles and 29 pressure acts. But we do need him to get more of the footy, or at least have a more linear line of disposals. You can't have a midfielder not get an effective disposal for a half a game of footy. You just can't do that.
Yep.
Anyway, I won't dwell on too many others. Ned, I thought, was a bit ineffective. Will Hamill, I thought, had good patches.
Yeah.
Particularly later in the game, looked really good. Bitch Hinge, I thought, struggled a little bit. Again, the whole setup just wasn't balanced right down back. Jake Saligo, I thought, was a really good game. 12 disposals, only 8 and 4. But I just felt like when he got around the ball, he looked like he belonged. 235 metres game from those 12 disposals. So he was...
sorry, Fiend, but I think he only had the one disposal in the last quarter. So he may have run out of a little bit of gas. But I did like what I saw of him this week. I just thought he did some very good stuff.
Used him on the wing a bit when we pushed Dawson back.
He did.
Love the fact that he would do second and third efforts. If it didn't quite work the first time, he's gone straight back in there.
Yeah,
a couple of times you saw that little burst of speed that he has.
There's no doubt he will be a player.
Yeah, and as Vardy Magic's just said in the chat, he's a good decision maker. Just those couple of little quality things that he did. Really happy with that. The other player I'd like to just mention, Chase Jones. Yeah, I think he's had a really good run of consistent games.
It's a good moment.
Getting to him. Not quite there on the run sheet yet. Soligo, definitely. We have nine effective disposals, so not a huge game. But what's his time on ground? Let me look at the right column. 81% time on ground. So you're probably right, Mac. He did probably run out of steam in the end. That's quite a big load for a kid in his second game of football. Particularly, Will Hamill only had 67% time on ground. So yeah, something to work on. And he's bulked up. He looks like he's really benefited from the gym.
Yeah, he's definitely obviously working in there because he did look like a slightly stronger version of himself when he first presented himself.
Yeah. All right. Tex, it was a funny game from Tex. Couldn't kick to save his life. Sort of in and out of it. A bit of a presence. Wasn't our worst by any stretch. Chase Jones, as you mentioned, Nicky, 11, 8 and 3. Two tackles. Let me just get his stuff up here so I can have a look. I want to have a look at his effective disposals, but I want to have a look at his defensive stuff. He had 8 defensive half pressure acts. He had overall he had 14 pressure acts. And he had the 5 effective disposals and none after about the 10-minute mark of the third quarter. So probably got overrun a little bit. Had 6 intercepts. Any score involvements? Only the 1. Tackles, only the 2. Had 5 turnovers, which is probably just the blight on his game at the moment, isn't it?
Which player is that one?
Chase Jones.
Yeah, look, I'll say this about Chase. He's really chancing his arm at the moment, and most of the time it's coming off. There were a couple of times where it didn't, but I do like the fact that he is playing like a player now who believes that he belongs there.
Yep, I'm quite happy with him. Far happier with him than Luke Brown, who I think is really struggling with that Achilles.
He had a horrible game.
Well, again, Mac, I mean, I know he's the experienced guy, but Charlie's actually touted him up the last couple of times that he's played on him, and I would have started with Chase on Charlie.
Totally agree.
Charlie's got no history with Chase. He's got Brown's measure, and I think it was setting Luke Brown up for a fail. I think Brown on who was it, McCarthy, would have been a far better matchup. So yeah, again, I don't think our coach has got that one right. Darcy Fogarty, how did we see his game? I'll hold fire for a minute.
Well, I'll be trading him at the end of the year, Fane. How I saw it.
Nick, how did it look at the ground to you?
There are a couple of tiny little moments where he did what we kind of wanted him to do, but he frustrated the hell out of me and I think the rest of the crowd that were there, because there were other times it was like, that's when you needed to present, Darcy. That was well and truly your chance to really take a stamp on this, because, as you said, Tex was being quiet. You didn't see him for a lot of the game. For Tex, he wasn't a dominant up the field. And Darcy was the one who was leading. He was playing a bit more up the higher at times, and it was just like, that's where we need you to use your body. We need you to use that nous that you supposedly had as a junior, and we saw very early on in his career, particularly that game against Richmond, and we haven't seen since.
Mac, you've already said your bit. I agree with Seasco in the chat. He's lazy mentally, in my opinion.
He is.
There was quite a bit of backing for him on Big Footy after the game, and I couldn't really understand it because the thing that you don't get from Darcy is taking the front position. Rarely, unless he's got a clear lead, you will rarely see him take front position in a marking contest. The amount of times I actually saw him third in line at a marking contest, and one of our blokes was going up who actually shouldn't have been the bloke that went up, but had to be the guy that went up because Darcy just wasn't there. And the same could be said for Himmelberg as well. They're both exactly the same in that regard. They do not fight hard enough for front position. And when the ball's not coming in great, you can make up for a lot of that by being in front position. Who's the best at that? Yeah. Richmond. Richmond are the best at that. You'll never see a Richmond forward get caught behind. They are always in front because they're ready for the chaos ball. When you've got a day or night like we had on Saturday night where it's not coming in cleanly, you need to be in front of your bloody opponent. And too often he wasn't. I have
literally thrown the towel on him, Payne. I would definitely trade him. We might pick up a second rounder for him with a bit of luck because people could see he might have potential and all that sort of crap. But it's just agony watching him play every week.
Yep, and I think he feels it. I don't think Darcy Fogarty actually thinks he belongs there anymore. You can read it on his face. You can read it on his body language. He's not I can't see a path forward, and I hate to say this again because he's a lovely bloke. He's very laid back, etc., etc. And I don't like to can blokes, but I can't see a path forward where Darcy Fogarty becomes a 50 goal a year, 150 game player. I just can't. I can't see it.
Won't happen.
Anyway, Nick Murray, I'm a bit of a fan. You know that I've got a soft spot for Nick, and I thought he did well defensively without much cover. You'll never die wondering with Nick in the air. He might kill 3 people, but he'll kill the ball as well. Not a lot of polish about him.
Generally, 2 of those will be his own teammates.
Well, it's their problem for getting in the bloody way, isn't it?
Precisely. I'm with you. I love him as a defender.
He is the toughest player in the side. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he's a crazy man. But that's the sort of bloke you want down back. You want a bloke that'll just throw himself in a contest. And I was disappointed when he was out of the team, and I know he hasn't been playing that well in the SANFL, but he's always going to give you effort. And in the air, he's always going to give you a contest. He might get outpointed by a smart forward every now and again, and he might turn the ball over when he bites off more than he can chew. But I don't think he's... someone says it's a good competition between Nick and Billy for the second KPD. I don't think it's a competition at all. I think Nick wins that hands down, and Billy will have to find something else to do. Joshua Shelley looks tired, looks a bit disgruntled. Losing can have that effect. Him. Yeah, well, losing can have that effect on a kid. And if they're giving him any sort of attention at all, I mean, he's snuck under the radar, I think, first few weeks, and then teams obviously realised he could play. He I don't know whether he needs a spell, but I think he'd be looking forward to the halftime break.
Yeah.
I think he only had 3 possessions up to halftime, was it?
Let me have a look. It wasn't
saying
many.
he was sooking it up a bit, not from how I was seeing it the ground. They were wearing him. He was being played very, very closely. As soon as he got anywhere near the ball, he was literally being, held and grabbed as such. But he was still trying to be proactive as part of that. I mean, I'm trying to think which was the goal in the third? No, second. I think it was the second. There was a really good goal that we got. There was a smart little tap on from him. There was like Rowie and him and I can't remember who it was. The other one. So he's still trying to be actively involved, even he's not getting a lot of possessions. But I agree, it might be nice just to give him a little bit of a freshen up and then bring him back in.
Yeah, I don't think it would hurt actually for him not to play at all next week. Neither Hayes or the twos. And just let him really freshen up and then bring him straight back in.
No, I don't think that's necessary, Mac. I just think he needs to learn how to stay in the game for longer, and he needs to take a leaf out of Sam Berry's book and find other ways to impact the contest when he's not getting the ball himself. I think that's probably what you noticed so far, that ball in hand, he's great and he makes things happen, but there's not a lot else at the moment. So he probably just needs to understand how he can impact the contest when he hasn't got the ball in his hand. He had only 4 touches up to halftime and then another 4 after halftime.
Yeah, it was very, his possessions are getting less each week. And look, Nicky's right. They don't give him any latitude because they know that he's a kid with talent.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But you can see that it is actually sort of really pissing him off, that he doesn't look as happy out there as he normally does.
Yeah. Strawny we've talked about, and Luke Pedlar, despite not coming on the ground, wasn't our worst. So there you go.
What up, Pedlar?
All right. Now, we better just whiz through really quickly our best and fairest votes.
Yeah.
And Macca, it's probably you first.
It is me first, and I'm happy to do it. And then it was just sort of juggling the 1 pointer. The 5 pointer I gave to Dawson. He didn't have the most possessions, but some of the possessions he gets are unreal, and what he does with the ball is outstanding. 4 points I gave to Laird. I thought he was the best of the midfielders. 3 I gave to Haitley. I thought he was very effective in his role as a big-bodied mid. And 2 I gave to Rowie. I loved the way he zip-zapped around the place and he created opportunities up forward and around the mid. And the 1 point I'm just tossing up between Duday and McAdam, and I reckon I'll give it to Duday because he did his under very difficult circumstances. So 1 to Duday.
We didn't really talk about McAdam. He's been quite a good addition since he's come back.
Yeah, look, he was a toss-up between him and Duday for that spot.
Yeah. Nick?
Well, you got your way.
McHenry.
Because I've moved somebody up into second.
Butts. We got Butts in there? Harry Schottenberg.
Just imagine the look you're getting right now.
Oh, I know it.
So, 5 votes to Dawson.
Geordie, yes.
I've swapped these 2 around now, even though he did frustrate me at the ground.
Bruce.
Laird.
Yeah.
3 votes to McAdam.
Yeah.
I thought it was probably one of his best games he's played for us.
He did play.
Certainly for a long time, yeah.
Yeah, and he was, and it was not just his goal kicking as well. It's around the ground, the rundown. I thought he was just involved in the game a lot more.
Yep.
I gave 2 to Haitley.
Yep.
And 1 to Rowie.
Right. That's all you get. I gave 5 to Bruce. 4 to Dawson. I thought he was excellent. 3 to Duday because I thought he was pushing shit uphill the whole game and did as best as he could. 2 to Haitley. and 1 to Gilbert.
Sorry?
McAdam.
Oh, okay.
Do you know, funny story about, I think it was Gilbert McAdam, my mate who is a mad cricketer. He had to work in Alice Springs for a few years, and while he was there, he played cricket for one of the Alice Springs team, and Gilbert McAdam was playing in the opposition. And McAdam, I think, Jeff, if you're listening and I get this wrong, sorry, Jeff knocked him over for a couple of fours, and McAdam was pretty quick, and McAdam went back to his mark and kept walking and left the ground halfway through the game. Just left the ground. He'd had enough. He didn't like being hit for boundaries. So halfway through his over, they all thought he was going back to his mark, and he just kept walking, jumped the fence and went home. And Jeff caught up with him later at, I don't know, pub somewhere. And Gilbert said, I just had enough, so I thought I'd go. Thankfully, our McAdam isn't doing that lately. He's staying for the whole game. He's playing quite well, so that's really good. All right, Nikki, before we finish up, I thought I might just throw this in. How about that?
Yes,
it's
back.
Nikki's Cockwomble.
Oh, Party Magic is like 2017 with all this music. Well, because unfortunately I've had quite a busy weekend, which has taken me away from football. So I did kind of ask for some assistance in the chat.
Yeah.
And I think we've very much got one, I think, that seems to be fairly outstanding, which is a certain umpire in our game who called, I think it was Jude Talia.
Oh, did he?
A couple of times. Yep, apparently was caught on the mic, which is why there was confusion as to whose free kick it was, because the umpire's going Talia, and our players are going, who?
Seriously.
Was that
must have been that blonde 22.
Bad number, that 22.
Yeah, I want to nominate him as a Cockwomble. I just cannot understand what he was trying to do. I'll leave it at that. No, I'll leave it at that. You're not allowed to say bad things.
Is that it, Nick? Is that all you got?
That was the main one. But if you guys have some others.
No, I don't have any others. Scott Morrison for wanting to change his whole personality 1 week out from the election.
I know he's going to be a leader now.
No, he's going to be sorry. He's not going to be such a bulldozer now. Apparently.
Well, he won't be, because he probably won't be in office.
He didn't realise that what people actually wanted was for him not to be such a dickhead. But anyway. Any others, Nick? No. I went to all that trouble to dig out the bloody theme song, and this is the best you've got to give me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be big next week, Nick. Got to be really super.
Yeah, come on, mate.
I will also have a weekend of not being able to watch any other football games, so unfortunately I will be relying on you guys a bit.
Right.
My volunteer work's actually taking me out all weekend.
Right. Starting to actually question your tenure here, Nick. We might have to make it Nikki is the Cockwomble rather than Nikki's Cockwomble soon.
No, I'm a bit more of the numbnut.
And on that note, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and on YouTube tonight. It's been a spirited chat that's gone well over time as usual. Thanks for Mick and Animal for coming on and giving us your 2 cents. It was most appreciated. Macca, thanks for turning up eventually and tearing yourself away from whatever the hell it was you were doing.
And Sunday mail, believe it or not.
Oh, and God. No, Bacchanac gets a
Reading the
nomination.
Sunday Mail, what the hell are you doing?
He's reading the ads.
I was not. I was actually studying all the stats of all the various games.
Hang on, you actually get the newspaper still? You're one of the 9 people that still gets the newspaper, is that right?
No, I get both. I get both.
What do you mean you get both?
It's the same bloody company.
Yeah, I get the digital version and I get the hard copy version.
Unbelievable. You know the stats are on afl.com.au for free, don't you?
I do know that.
All right. Anyway, look, thanks to everyone.
I was filling in time and I filled in too much time.
Yeah, you filled in far too much time. Look, thanks also to our patrons on Patreon. Your support ongoing is amazing. If you do want to support us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/AFLCrowCast. In the meantime, Nikki, Macca, you're out. And on Tuesday night, Peter will be in. So until then, everyone stay safe, be good, and we'll see you then.
Yep. Good night, all.
Good night, all.